Bloody hell.
So we can't go back the way we came. And there's not much in this room, honestly. There's a big statue of Thor. Here he is, resting on his hammer. Well, interesting enough, this room has got a bunch of statues of Jormungandr again. Who is, I think, the opponent of Tyr, the god of justice, from what I recall. Tyr... No, I lie. Thor is the one who fights Jormungandr and then dies of poison. This block was knocked loose in the explosion. Tyr is the god of justice, who had one hand, who then afterwards has to fight Fenrir, because Fenrir took his hand originally. Notice how that pop blended in the background? Very sneaky. Thor, of course, dies just after killing Jormungandr. Sad story. This is obviously in Ragnarok, their version of the end of the world. Now up here we have a bunch of different columns we can go up. We'll probably pick this one. And here we are, now it's time for our introduction to pole mechanics, where we realise that she is, again has flawless balance and is generally a perfect human specimen. As they always say, you know, there's in the Marvel universe, she's an Olympic standard gymnast, because she is. Well done, Olga. There's no reason to crawl, always press roll. Grab another reward. But you begin to see my problem with these rewards, which is that they are basically require no thought whatsoever to find. The vast majority of rewards in this level are not hidden. They are simply around, you have to explore to find them. Whereas the nature of the hierarchy in Legend meant that some of the silvers would actually be hidden by what were legitimate puzzles. And the thing is, there's 26 rewards in this level. I don't really care if I have any, if I miss a few, because they don't really mean anything. They don't affect my character, unlike the relics, which give you extra health. Remember that ring I was talking about earlier? That's its actual use. These are more a reward for patience than anything else, and that annoys me. And the fact they're so indiscriminate and identical, it's a loss, I think. It is definitely a minus in comparison with Legend. I'll show you some pole gymnastics in this. Now, this is actually quite complicated in a sense, because you have to work out that if you press the reverse direction to your swinging, if you let go, she'll simply try and grab on top like that. And if we go, come on, swing again. Like this. There are a bunch of things you can do. The first is you can do a stop turn. Not a stop turn, you can do a kind of flip turn like that. The stop turn is a little bit harder to pull off. That's not it. That. No, it's not that. Curses on. I will do this. I shall. There we are. I love that. There's two different ways to turn around on the pot, which I like. It's cool. And it has a little effect, because one's faster than the other. And now we're back where we started, in this large room on an area that we previously could not have got to. If you remember, I pointed these out that you couldn't get to these even by chimneying earlier. That's where we came in. But if we look carefully, we'll notice there's a pale ridge running along here, which indicates, yes, we can go sideways. So let's mantle along. When I said mantling earlier, I do mean mantling is this. Chimneying is where you jump from side to side. So here's one reward. But the path does not finish here. I think it goes over here. Oops, this camera. And here is our relic. Now, this seems to me to be slightly tawdry in comparison to what we were finding previously. Great golden chalices and crosses. All the relics in this look the same. Again, this is, I guess this is part of the emphasis on the proto-myth, monomyth rather, but at the same time, it feels slightly like, you know what, fuck it, we're just going to do one model and leave it at that. But there we are. As you may have noticed, it gave me extra health. I now have a little green bar next to my main green bar, which represents the extra health I get. The yellow bar is adrenaline, which you'll find out, whose purpose you shall find out shortly. And now, I'm going to leave, because I've had enough of this wet and rather dreary area. Ah! You evaded me previously, but not this time. This is the alternative route I pointed out earlier coming back. But in general, I hope you can by now get a feeling of the difference between the philosophy of level design in this and Legend. This is all about having much more intuitive environments that are not linear and reward exploration much more. I wish they could have had a separate system for the more rewards, more puzzles for the rewards, but you don't get everything you ask for. You gonna jump up there? Thank you. You begin to feel slightly the irritation of the camera because it does restrict your movements. She can also stumble. If you fall badly, she stumbles, which I don't think is fantastic. I'm getting my stay down. Finish with stay down, are we? FPS hovering around 20 or 10. I'll sort that out in a little bit. I'm sure it'll sort itself out shortly. Oh, I went, when I was considering doing this, I went to the official Tomb Raider forum just to see what people thought about Underworld and see if there are any 2 bits of information I can pick up that would be interesting. They almost universally hated it. And that's because that forum is full of the most die-hard core design fans. They absolutely love the old core design games. Core design were the English company that made the first Tomb Raiders. Not Crystal Dynamics, who both confusingly have the initial CD. Frankly, Crystal Dynamics have done what are, in many senses, superior games. What I mean by that is, if you were to compare this to the original Tomb Raider, you would see that this is far and away the winner. The problem is that people tend to have a slightly inconsistent sound where they say, yes, for the time it was so good. Well, the answer is, you're probably never going to get that feeling you got when you played the first Tomb Raider from any of its successors. And the reason is because it was an entirely new experience at the time. And so by challenging it for this unfair standard, they totally, I think they screw the game for themselves, and they also sort of trot out this repetitive, meaningless thing, oh, but it doesn't feel like Lara Croft. Well, of course it doesn't, because it's a reboot. It's intended to take her in a different direction. The old Lara Croft was getting stale. Over here we have the mysterious current, which bears you ever upwards towards your boat. Notice that Lara doesn't get the bends. She has no nitrogen in her tissues. The interesting thing about this is this implies that Lara is in fact the one human being on Earth who could probably go into space unharmed. And I mean by this, totally naked. People often assert, incorrectly, that if you go into space, you freeze to death. This is not true. And the reason why this isn't true is that although space has, for all intents and purposes, a temperature that's very close to absolute zero, although if you actually look at the temperature of the molecules, the very few molecules that are in space, they tend to actually almost universally be very high energy, and that means they have a high temperature. And notice this kind of drift. However, since there's nothing in space for you to conduct onto, there's no material touching your skin, the only way you lose heat in space is via radiation, and that's very slow. So in fact, you wouldn't really feel cold in space at all. What would kill you in space is the fact that you're no longer under 1 bar of atmospheric pressure. What this means is you effectively get a very extreme form of the bends, and the bends is where you go down quite deep, 2 or 3 atmospheric pressures, bars of atmospheric pressure down if you get forward, and you go up too fast. And what happens is when you're under pressure, your whole body becomes pressurized, and it can deal with that. And one of the things that happens under high pressure is that nitrogen becomes dissolved in your bodily fluids. When you surface, this pressure is relieved, and all this gas comes popping out of solution. And this gas can cause what's called nitrogen narcosis. But I'll describe that after she's had a little cutscene. This ship is, of course, Amanda's. And here is where the first good theme of the series starts. This is the Amanda ship theme, and I really quite like it. Charles Folman, the composer I was talking about previously, did do a lot of the work for this, but another guy called Nathan McCree did as well. And I think it shows. It's nowhere near as diverse as the Legend soundtrack, and actually has far fewer memorable themes. I in general would rate it as being an effective soundtrack, but nowhere near as good. And here is our first taste of combat. Now you see, the first time I played this game, several times, I didn't actually realise that you could press Z while fighting to activate bullet time. I had assumed, totally incorrectly, that the whole game, that the only use of bullet time was doing headshots. And I'm pretty sure that all the people I talked to who have also played the game thought the same thing. They did not realise you could press Z to go into bullet time. So we're going to take around. Let's have some fun with the combat. Let's sprint towards our first guy. There he is. I'll headshot him just to show you. Hello. Do you like the headshot manoeuvre? There we are. Headshot, you press Q and you're next to one, shoot them in the head. Instant kill. By handing this off the second. That up there, we're not going to get headshot now. We're going to have to deal with this fella. Go, 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 go! Fire! When you kick, you can also do a flying kick like this. Oops, that's not a flying kick. That's